Joining me now, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, a Republican who has literally been trying to force his way into some of those offices in Broward County to get some answers. He joins us live tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ed.
I want to get to the Senate mess because it seems the biggest one tonight. But before I forget, is it time for the Democrat Andrew Gillum in the governor's race to concede? Because as Phil just reported, they're counting, they're recounting, and only one vote has changed, and he's down.
Yeah, absolutely. Governor-elect Ron DeSantis is going to do a great job for Florida. Andrew Gillum's continuation of this charade really is undignified. I think he ought to concede immediately. And you see with some of these instances, whether it's Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum, or maybe others, where they're trying to enhance their celebrity by not conceding. And that's not really good for democracy. We all ought to be willing to accept the results of the voters. And here that was clearly for Ron DeSantis.
All right, let's get to the Senate race. From what I understand, and you heard in Phil's reporting, that particularly in Broward County, it looks like Democrat Bill Nelson lost roughly 700 votes after their recounting, and so they're supposed to turn that in, and they missed the deadline by 2 minutes. Rick Scott, the Republican, his campaign, which you support obviously, is saying tonight they did that on purpose because they don't want to admit that Bill Nelson is losing votes.
Well, this circumstance arises because there is a discrepancy in the number of votes that went through the unofficial count initially and then those which were counted by the recount. It's a discrepancy of over 2,000 ballots. And when you actually evaluate those, Rick Scott does rather well within that pool of ballots. And so he's understandably frustrated that some staff member has this report go in 2 minutes late and then he's unable to benefit from that. Ed, at the end of the day, I think that really Rick Scott's win is also outside the margin of fraud, but it demonstrates that challenge. And there's new reporting out of the Washington Post that Broward Supervisor of Elections official was saying that the reason that that discrepancy exists is because the ballot pool was polluted by ballots that were not supposed to be counted.
But Congressman, as you know, we've been lectured for days that we have to, quote unquote, count all the votes. Now we count the votes, and it looks like it's not helping the Democrat, so the paperwork's not turned in. Is it count all the votes?
It shows the hypocrisy. Yeah, it really shows the hypocrisy of Senator Nelson's argument. He is suing in a variety of other counties throughout the state, saying, oh, we have to count every vote under any circumstance. And now, as a result of a clerical error that neither Rick Scott nor the people who voted for him could control, potentially a universe of over 2,000 ballots, giving Rick Scott more than a 700 vote additional boost to his lead. I mean, that would not be democratic, but it's indicative of these broad problems we have with compliance with the law in Broward and Palm Beach counties.
Congressman, on the other hand, there's a Republican, as you know, former Congressman Joe Walsh, who has heard your comments saying that this is a dry run for Democrats to, quote unquote, steal the election from Donald Trump in 2020. And he is saying, wait a second, this is irresponsible and dangerous of you.
Yeah, Joe Walsh was the member of Congress who went on Sacha Baron Cohen's television show, looked directly in the camera, and said toddlers should have firearms. So I probably won't take too much of his advice on what constitutes irresponsible rhetoric. I don't take my marching orders or my P's and Q's from somebody who doesn't have enough sense not to read inflammatory and dangerous material that's put in front of them. I've
got less than 30 seconds. How does this Senate battle end? Not just with who you think is going to win, but what's the reasonable timetable now? There's a hand recount, is that right?
Yeah, there'll be a hand recount. That takes a while with 8 million ballots to go through and count, but ultimately it ends with Rick Scott being sworn in as the senator. And then hopefully, Ed, we can actually work together, Republicans and Democrats, diagnose these problems, and then demand greater transparency along the way. The best antidote to fraud is transparency, and so if you force everybody to turn the cards face up earlier in the process, you don't have a circumstance where you got 80,000 ballots with a very dubious chain of custody.
Congressman Gaetz, appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thank you.